Hey everybody, this is Modern Refugee. I always get a lot of interest in my SHTF scenario videos, and there's been a particular thing that I've been thinking about here recently. So I decided I'm going to do a short SHTF scenario for you guys here. I'm going to do a little bit of an introduction now. We'll get into the scenario, and then I'm going to do a little bit of a discussion afterward. I'm going to hit some of the key points of this particular scenario. Now, I have followed the conflict in Europe pretty much since it started. And there's a couple of things that I noticed coming out of that conflict that have evolved since it started. And one is the heavy use of drone warfare and then the heavy use of ballistic missiles. Now, the United States hasn't really been attacked since Pearl Harbor. And I'm beginning to think, what would this scenario look like? What if there was some type of World War III type scenario that maybe started with a couple of nuclear strikes? Because when anybody ever talks about World War III, it's pretty much nuclear annihilation. But what if it was just maybe a couple of nuclear strikes at the beginning, and then it turns into some type of conventional war with all the ballistic missiles and drone warfare and stuff that is going on now? What if that would take place sort of peer-to-peer, country-to-country? What would that look like for just average people in, let's say, Canada and the United States, if there was these limited airstrikes that are pretty much taking place in Eastern Europe right now? What if that happened in basically North America? So that is sort of the introduction here to this particular scenario. I'm going to get into the scenario for you guys, and I'm going to come back and we're going to talk about it. Who would have guessed a few months back that World War III would look like this? Since it all started, the only things that have been nuked are Ramstein Air Force Base and one of our carrier groups, and then Kaliningrad. And they said at the beginning, if there was going to be any type of EMP strike, an EMP strike would be followed by a full nuclear retaliatory strike. So the EMP that everybody thought was going to happen really didn't happen. And it's all boiled down into conventional, a lot of missiles launched from submarines, and a lot of cruise missiles launched over the Atlantic Ocean that have struck the eastern seaboard, and that's pretty much what has happened to here, to our part of the country. And we knew it was bad when they started rationing gas, and that's because they took out the loop. And if you don't know what the loop is the Louisiana offshore oil port, and it was completely destroyed. And from what I've heard, it was ballistic missiles that were conventional missiles that were launched from submarines somewhere in the Caribbean that took out that and some of the refineries and port facilities in coastal Texas and stuff. And gas has been bad. You can't really get the fuel, and everybody has been boiled down into a select group of people that are still working. If you're deemed important enough to work, you're allowed to purchase 20 gallons of gas to go back and forth to work with, and that's pretty much it. And who would have thought that all the lockdowns and stuff that took place back in 2020 are, a lot of that stuff has been refined, and they're using it now. And here in Michigan, the big things that got taken out here were the Sioux Locks, and I imagine that was because of all the iron ore that flows through there, because that all flows to the steel mills and the war machine. And then Selfridge Air National Guard Base, and then right beside that the Blue Water power plant. And then, of course, a lot of that power flows back and forth between Ontario and Michigan, and of course that took out the oil refinery in Sarnia. So then that straps even more. A lot of oil and refining capabilities are what has been struck, and a lot of military bases around the world have been struck as well. So everything is kind of consolidated back here to North America. Um, when this all started, everybody got QR codes basically sent to their phones, just like it was during those presidential alerts. And they really haven't instituted any type of rationing. How they've instituted kind of controls on things is you have to scan the code before you purchase anything, either in person or online, and it just limits what you can purchase. It'll just say that you've reached your limit or whatever that it is. And kind of frivolous stuff, it lets you buy that stuff. But the bare essentials, things like parts and food and medicine and fuel and clothing, the basic stuff that people need, that's the stuff that's all been more or less limited to what you can get. Again, it goes back to the lockdowns and stuff back in 2020. The system has just sort of refined all that. And a lot of power infrastructure was taken out too, especially on the West Coast. And then the bridges. The bridges are another bad one. Who would have thought that they would have struck all the bridges on the Mississippi River? And there's, from what I've heard, about 1/3 of the bridges on the Mississippi River have been taken out, and the ones that are left, they've actually put air defense batteries over them to protect them. A lot of them between the Quad Cities like Davenport and Moline and stuff, in Memphis. Those them core ones in the center of the country are the ones that have been hit. And most of Washington, D.C. has been, from what I've been told, a lot of the government facilities and stuff, that has all been evacuated. Washington, D.C. is still there, but it's more or less empty. All the different departments like DOD and Department of Energy, that kind of stuff, they've all been dispersed to COG facilities throughout the country. And there's a lot of, I've noticed that here in our small town, there's just a lot of kind of plain looking vehicles with U.S. government plates driving around. So who knows where all these key people are at. I don't believe they're all in those bunkers that everybody talks about. I think they're more or less hiding in plain sight in medium-sized towns and in just average situations. With the way technology has gotten now, a lot of stuff can be communicated back and forth without a lot of those large facilities. So more or less, the average people like me, we're still going back and forth to work, but everything is really short and to the point. Pretty much most of the restaurants have closed. Anything that has to do with any type of tourism or travel, that's all closed. The airports are all shut down. A lot of the interstate has been closed because it's just moving military equipment and stuff around. Like I've been told, you can't even get past. You can't really get past Grayling on I-75 because Camp Grayling is one of the places that wasn't hit here in Michigan, and I guess it is just fortified to the teeth right now, and they don't let anybody even remotely come in or around all that. And there's air defense batteries put up all the way around to protect Camp Grayling. And so a lot of, the things that Americans were used to, air travel, travel on the roads and stuff, that's all been curtailed. So anyway, that's what the situation looks like here, the first 6 weeks of World War III. And I don't think anybody would have guessed that this is what it would look like. Anyway, hope you guys are all doing good out there. You guys take care. Hey guys, hope you didn't think that acting was too bad there in that dramatization, and hopefully I got my point across to you guys, discussing a little bit about the targets and what things would look like, and want to have just a basic discussion on it now and kind of go into a depth on some of these things. I will also put some links in the description for a few of the things that I'm going to talk about here, where you guys can look that stuff up and do a little research on that stuff if you like. And the first thing I'm going to mention here is the EMP thing. EMP is talked about a lot in on prepper channels and stuff. And I remember when the big O was president back a couple administrations ago, there was a lot of talk too at that particular time about EMPs and EMP strikes. And I remember when he was president, he came out and he gave this press conference and they asked him about EMPs, and he said if the United States ever got EMP'd, that the United States would retaliate with a full nuclear retaliation. So there is a deterrent in place for EMP strikes, and that's something that a lot of people don't really talk about, but I thought it was worth mentioning and adding it into this particular scenario. Another thing is I took this scenario in the direction of sort of a peer-to-peer type conflict. But there's a lot of bad third-party actors as well. And another thing with the bridges, what would the United States look like if, let's say, 25 to 30% of the bridges on the Mississippi River became inoperable? Now, you can look at that from like military action. You can look at that from some type of, sleeper attack, something like that, but also like a New Madrid earthquake. The New Madrid seismic zone is in the area around Memphis. And I looked it up. There's 143 bridges on the Mississippi River. Well, if 40 of those bridges in the center part of the country, like between Memphis and St. Louis, or maybe even north to the Quad Cities, if those bridges didn't exist, the east to west travel of goods, military equipment, people, that would be severely curtailed. And bridges in general, I mean, we're in Michigan, we're in a border state. There's a couple of key bridges that go across over into Ontario. If something happened to those bridges, that would severely reduce commerce in this part of the country, and it would affect lives. Going back to what my relative's radiation doctor said during 2020, the radioactive material that they used in their nuclear medicine was degraded by the time it came into Michigan because it had to wait so long to get over the border into Michigan from Ontario. So those bridges in the center part of the country are extremely vital to our day-to-day lives, whether we realize them or not. And just because we produce a lot of oil here in the United States, that oil can't really be used when it's pumped out of the ground. It has to be refined. So then those refining facilities are an obvious target for any bad actors, whether they're, foreign governments or individuals or groups, whatever. And that's where I got into the loop. Not a lot of people have heard of the loop. In fact, I've never heard the loop mentioned on any prepping channels. And the Louisiana offshore oil port is a really important piece of that energy infrastructure here in the United States. And if you don't know what that is, that'll be one of the links in the description. I'll put that in there so you guys can read a little bit about that and how much oil flows through that particular offshore facility. Another thing too is everybody talks about these bunkers that are everywhere. What makes you think important people are going to be in those bunkers? Maybe they're just a gigantic decoy. And that's another thing that I don't hear a lot of people talking about. Maybe a small town out in the middle of nowhere is going to be a safer place. And in one of these bunkers that pretty much they're supposed to be secret, but then everybody knows about, kind of one of those things. And another thing too is energy production facilities beside military bases and oil refineries. Those kind of things go hand in hand. You can't refine oil without electricity. You can't run a large military complex without some type of electricity. So those links between the places that produce the energy that go to these other key facilities are another thing that are sort of an obvious target. And like I said, none of this stuff here that I'm talking about is like any type of top secret information. This is just stuff, if you pay attention and you read, you can pick this stuff up out of just basic information, whether it's news articles, it's online articles, it's books. I mean, most of what I know about COG facilities or continuity of government facilities, I've read in different books that have been on the subject over the years, and they are a thing. And like I said, our enemies and the people that don't like our ways of life are intelligent. And I think when people kind of minimize how when people minimize, our adversaries, so to speak, you're kind of underestimating your opponent to a certain extent. And like I said, these are all things that I think are good to discuss in the prepper sphere and talk about these different things, these different weaknesses, so we as individuals can build up redundancies for our own personal lives to minimize and reduce the effects on our lives. Now, if it's a really big event, they're going to affect our lives one way or another. We're not going to get out of anything scot-free, but we can maybe reduce some of those things if we have some things in place. And another thing, everything that took place during 2020, I believe the powers that be, corporations, government, whatever, they all learn from that experience. They learned, how to institute rationing, and you can call it, limits, you can call it whatever, limiting products is just a passive rationing system. That's all that is. And whether it comes from a government agency or if it just comes from a private company that's just doing it, to help everybody out, that's all the same thing. It all comes from the same source. Phone calls are made and they say, hey, we would really like you to do this, for this reason or whatever. Most of those companies are going to fall in line right away, especially the large ones, and which companies were kind of in charge of everything when all the lockdowns and stuff took place. They were all the large ones, so you can pretty much figure on something like that. But I can see where there would be some type of rationing in fuel if there was some type of major conflict. I can see where there's going to be curtailing of movement, and I can see where there would be rationing of basic goods, and like I said in the video, not, frivolous stuff, but the basic things that people need to live: medicine, food, energy, these type of things, clothing, sanitation stuff. That's the stuff that's going to be rationed. So of course that would be the stuff that you want to have enough on hand if something takes place. But anyway, this is Modern Refugee. Appreciate all my subscribers out there. Just wanted to share this little scenario with you guys here, that what if World War III starts and it doesn't go nuclear? What if it turns into some type of conventional war here in North America? Just something for you guys to think about. Hope you guys got a little information, a little entertainment out of this video. As always, I appreciate each and every one of you guys out there. You guys have a good one.